I want to take you back in history, just very briefly, to 1966, when we were all about, roughly. We were not in the European Union. ICI, for which my father worked, having served in Italy during the war, etc., decided that the old British idea of trade was that our home market was, of course, Her Majesty's United Kingdom, but it was also the British Commonwealth. And that more or less worked for about 10, 15 years after the war. There was no prospect of Britain joining the European Union, because at that stage, you may remember General de Gaulle had this very fair-handed attitude towards Britain, because the Conservatives applied to join, he said no, and then Harold Wilson applied to join, and he said no. So ICI took the decision, we have got to be in that market, because this is now our home market. And so my father and others were sent to Frankfurt and Main, and they set up a manufacturing. Yes, we had manufacturing in the 1960s, plants where they made fibres, which they sold very successfully, competing with German, Italian, and French companies. What finished, not just the British, but the European manufacturing trade effort, was that the Americans, who are also our competitors, put up a 10% tariff against all European man-made fibres coming into the US. That killed it dead. Now, when people say we can negotiate a good trade deal, don't take Barack Obama, the President of the United States, universally welcomed after George Bush with a rather different approach, and I'll come on to war in a second, when he says, of course it's up to you to vote, you make the decision, but let me as President of the United States just tell you what the United States is going to do with your trade deals, which we can negotiate because we have 50% or 33%, you're at the back of the queue. When we are a leading member of the European Union, after 43 years of hard work by Graham and others, Arthur Cofield, the British Commissioner, who set up the single market, which we had pressed for, if you honestly think you can get all the benefits of the European single market without paying for them or without turning up to any of the meetings, because Norway can do it. Yeah, Norway is part of the Nordic Union. They have a single market. Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and it works for them. I just appeal to you, as one who grew up after the war, living in Germany. I was stunned by what's called the economic wonder. Within 20 years, we used to fly to Frankfurt. Everything was brand new thing. They'd had the Marshall Plan. Heathrow, I'm just as proud of Britain as anybody else, was covered in grime. The porters were on strike, or if they weren't, you couldn't really tell much of the difference. We had basically bled ourselves white through winning the war. Therefore, all our commitments, India was still part of the British Raj until 48. Africa, we could no longer afford. The two winners, in a sense, of the Second World War were the Americans and the Soviet Union, who replaced the Europeans. Now, much as we don't like it, because we were never defeated in battle, in war, we no longer run the British Empire. We are not the world power that within our lifetimes we were. Therefore, it makes an awful lot of sense to work with our allies, our friends, and our partners to achieve what we can't do ourselves, or we would do less well. Jobs is one of the most important things. You take the Erasmus scheme. British students had the biggest uptake of the opportunity to study anywhere at any university for a period of their course under the scheme, and lecturers as well. What a formative experience that was. And I know many students have benefited from it hugely. They can actually speak French and German. Oh my goodness. They don't have to, because everybody else speaks English. What I'm saying is, if you want to equip the next generation, and indeed our grandchildren, because I want this Remain victory to last for at least 2 generations. I don't want Nigel Farage coming up 5 minutes later saying, no, it wasn't fair, we'll have another referendum. No, we're going to fight this to the end. We are going to win, and I hope by a convincing victory, as we did in 1975. Why? Peace and prosperity. People say, oh, peace is all NATO, it's nothing to do with the European Union. Yeah, peace with the Soviet Union was the Cold War, not the Hot War, but peace within Europe Even that hasn't held. Remember the Bosnian War, the massacre at Srebrenica. Why? Because the European countries couldn't agree amongst themselves. France and Britain took one view, Germany took another view. When Europe doesn't work, it affects us. We vote to come out of the European Union, and all the migrants will stay on the other side of the English Channel.
Excuse me.
First of all, many of the migrants are not migrants, they're refugees. Under a United Nations agreement, we are obliged to give help, as we did in the 1930s, to the Jewish population of Nazi Germany, as we did to my ancestors who were kicked out of France by Louis XIV for being Huguenots, etc., etc. We are humanitarian, civilized people. We're arguing about, can we take 3,000 parentless refugees? Angela Merkel's taken 1 million. Now, last word, peace and prosperity. Everybody is entitled to their view. We've heard a lot about democracy. I would like to see parliamentary democracy working in the European Union and in our nation states. When somebody had a go at Jean-Claude Juncker, said he's unelected. Well, actually, listen to this, because he's the first President of the Commission who was appointed by our elected governments because the party in the group, the party grouping in the European Parliament with the maximum votes was the party I was proud to be a member as a British pro-European Conservative, the Conservative and Christian Democrat EPP party. They came top of the poll, so their candidate, Jean-Claude Juncker, was appointed. It takes a long time to develop democracy. We take in this country democracy almost for granted. We go back to King John and Magna Carta. But there is a danger, if we get this wrong, that extremists can say, we'll promise you the world tomorrow, and then run into difficulties. We might well find tensions. If we're not careful about what we say about migration, we might well find tensions there. Immigration has benefited this country hugely through the centuries, and we know it. We've got to have a sensible agreement, and we can only do that together. So for my vote, Mr. Chairman, I vote to stay in the European Union, where we've been for over 40 years, to build upon it, so that we give the opportunity to our children's generation and their children's generation to share the British experience with the rest of our continent, Europe.